What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron. And on today's show, man, I have a special guest, someone that I admire and just one of the best talent evaluators out here. I got Rashad Phillips of SportsTalk 2319 and basketball legends. Yes, you are a legend. Rashad, my man, appreciate you coming on Off the Ball podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Chris. I've been watching you from afar. You've been doing a tremendous job of building your platform. I really love what you stand for. Thanks for reaching out. I'm excited. Let's get going.
Yes. Like I said, I'm very excited about the show and got a lot to talk about with you. So let's dive into it. Talk to me a little bit about yourself. Just about what you do right now and just everything, because you got a lot of hats, you got a lot of things that you do. So just talk to me a little bit about yourself before we get into more stuff.
Yeah, it's hard. Look, I'm from the east side of Detroit, born and raised with the game of basketball. Is where I come from. It's just who I am. I'm a coach's son. My father started a community center. Back in 1979, I was born in 78, so I'm giving you my age right there. I'm a little older. And I just was a kid that just really embraced sports, man. I was a great baseball player, football player, basketball player, and just kind of nurtured over the years. Basketball kind of won out because it was just something that was just really predominantly going on in my neighborhood at the time, and turned out to be a really solid player. Now today, obviously, I'm in the media, trying to cover the world's best athletes and just give a voice for those who don't have one. So I'm excited to see what the future holds. And again, it's a pleasure to be on your show.
Yes. So talk to me about growing up in Detroit, Michigan. How was that? How was the basketball scene? And just talk to me a little about growing up in Detroit.
Yeah, I had a tremendous childhood. I did. I had two great parents who were very sports dominant. My mother doesn't. I don't really mention my mom a lot in any of these podcasts or things, but my mom was very instrumental in my upbringing as far as sports. She loved sports. Her mother, my grandmother, loved sports. They were more football people. And my father was a baseball, basketball, football guy. I mean, I'm named after an NFL football player, Owner Rashad.
Yep.
So that's where my name comes from. I'm named after a football player, right? So I had a great childhood, man. I had great friends. I had my father did a terrific job of providing, and I had a great environment to really just hone in on what I wanted to be. It was a natural talent, and it was really fun.
So were you all Detroit teams? Did you root for the Pistons? You rooted for the Lions? I mean, rooting for the Lions is, I wouldn't blame you if you didn't. But was it all Detroit teams you were rooting for?
Yeah, I was one of those kids, and I'm still like that today. I was more kind of intertwined with the players individually. Gotcha. So I wasn't like, oh, I'm a Laker fan or I'm a this fan, or I was more a player fan. So for me, growing up, I really idolized Isaiah Thomas, because Isaiah was he was a small guard out of Chicago that was, obviously there with the Detroit Pistons. And he was a huge inspiration for me. I mean, imagine me as a kid watching, Isaiah Thomas win championships against the Magic Johnsons, the Larry Birds, defeating Michael Jordan. Like watching that as a kid, it kind of gave me inspiration that one day, you know what, maybe I could be that. Maybe I could be great at the game and without having the highest vertical or, the being the tallest guy in the room. So Isaiah Thomas was definitely an inspiration to me as a child.
Yeah. Did you emulate most of your game around him?
I did. I did. Honestly, Isaiah Thomas and Michael Jordan were the two guys for me that I tried to emulate. Isaiah, because he was a smaller player and he could beat you with his mind. He could beat you with his magnetism. his ability to shape chemistry and make others around them better and elevate them. And then from Michael Jordan's standpoint, Michael was a great scorer. He defied the odds to put the ball in the basket at all costs. He had the flair, he had the baggy shorts, and obviously he had the shoes. Yes. So I was able to kind of mix both of their games into mine. And I mean, again, I was more of a player supporter than a team supporter. But being from Detroit, I would root for the Pistons when they were going against Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. And I was, hey man, Detroit.
Yeah. How, I mean, just talk to me about the vibe, because you grew up in the heyday of the Detroit Pistons. So just the vibe of Detroit. I mean, just talk to me about how it was just growing up around that when the Pistons were at their heyday. They were the team.
It was crazy because those great teams in in each city, when your team is playing well or having a historic run, a lot of times they take on the identity of the city, right? Exactly. And the so-called bad boys were the identity of the city of Detroit. Just lunch pail, hard worker hat, everyday worker, get it done, no complaining, play through injuries, sacrifice for the person next to you. That was the Detroit Pistons, and that was the way that I was raised, coming from Detroit. We don't complain. We're survivors. We make it out of any situation. And that's just how the Detroit Pistons represented the city of Detroit, and that's what made it so unique and made it so historic and iconic for me as a kid to still have those memories. I'm getting chills right now even talking about it because I still remember Vinnie Johnson hitting the game-winning shot to beat Portland. I remember Isaiah knocking off Magic Johnson. I remember all this stuff like it was yesterday.
That's awesome. Let's get into your basketball career, because it's to me it's just so fascinating, your career. So when was that first moment you realized, you know what, I could hoop? I'm actually pretty good. When was that first realization?
As a kid, I would say about 6 or 7 years old, I kind of knew. I was raised under the great basketball players. I was birthed around them. I come from being around Steve Smith. I was around Steve Smith at 7, 8 years old. I was around Chris Webber at 9, 10 years old. I was around those type of people. So Chris Webber and Steve Smith, those guys saw me as a little kid. Lorenzo Orr, they validated me. They would always say that, Rashad, you're going to be special as a basketball player. So getting that validation from a guy like Steve Smith or Chris Webber at 7, 8, 9 years old, I knew then that if they see this, then maybe I have a future in this.
Yeah. I mean, those are definitely some names that hold weight,
Yeah.
Chris Webber, I mean, he's a Michigan legend. I mean, what he did with the Fab Five and everything with Michigan, took them. Before that, yeah. I'm sure you had that, and then you had the Pistons. I mean, there was a lot of good stuff happening.
I was surrounded by I told you, I was surrounded by basketball. I'm not making this up. Steve Smith was a legend at Detroit Persian. My parents graduated from Persian. I lived 6-7 minutes from Persian. He went on to be one of the greats at Michigan State. I was around that. Mm-hmm. Chris Webber won 3 state titles. I was around that. I saw it, so I was always surrounded by great basketball. So it was only right for some of that magic dust to sprinkle on me.
For real. Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. All right. So let's talk about, high school and all that. You were a 4-year starter, varsity starter.
Sure.
Not just a starter, not JV, fresh. You were a 4-year varsity star. I mean, that's rare.
That's rare.
In any part of the country. That is rare, So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was a huge. I mean, now that I'm older and look back at it now, it's like, wow, like, yeah, 4 years of varsity is a huge accomplishment. Huge accomplishment. I didn't go to my neighborhood school, which was Detroit Persian. I ended up going to Ferndale, and Ferndale, funny or not, but it was really a school where I was recruited to play football because I was a really good football player. I played for the Oak Park Trojans, and the Oak Park Trojans had a lot of the players on the team that were from Ferndale. And when I got there, Coach McNeil, it was, a no nonsense. He was like, my high school coach was a lot like John Thompson of Georgetown. Okay. He was a no nonsense, yep. Hold you accountable type coach. And it was exactly what I needed coming from the east side of Detroit. I was still a little raw. Mm-hmm. And he trusted me. My teammates trusted me, and he put the ball in my hands. And we had 6 seniors. So imagine me, I'm barely 5 foot, and I'm starting on varsity with 6 seniors, so that's a lot of responsibility. Yes. And it was just how my teammates embraced me, how that school embraced me, the city of Ferndale, it's home to me. And it was just a tremendous 4 years of high school, being able to have some success. I had great teammates, Ray Pope, Alvin Jones, Chris McNeil, rest in peace, Carlos Whitmore, Omari Rideout, Greg Scott. I mean, I played with some great teammates, man. So I wouldn't be here without the support of them as well in the city of Ferndale and the student body.
Yeah. So you said, you were a smaller, guard. How did you manage to not, because obviously, a lot of people would probably use that against you, right? That you're small, you can't do this, you can't do that. Try to just, get you down and all that. How did you fight against that? Because I'm sure you heard that constantly throughout your high school and just your whole professional career and everything. So how did you use that as fuel? What was that? What did you do to use that as fuel to forget all that nonsense?
You got 2 choices in life. You could run from it, or you can look it dead in the face. And I was one of those people that I'm going to look it right in the face. I always embraced the doubt. It helped me build who I was. It fueled me to hear the criticism, to hear he's not big enough. It fueled me. I trained harder. My dreams were clearer. I needed you to tell me that I couldn't do it. I wanted you to tell me that. That's the reason why I believe that my career was as iconic as it was for high school and college, because so many people told me I couldn't do it. So a lot of people shy away from adversity, but I actually would meet it in a dark alley any day of the week. And that's just the type of person I am. I'm a Detroit raised guy. That's usually the Detroit way. We don't run from anything. We embrace it. And that's what kind of helped me get through it. Were there tough times? Absolutely. Were there times where I looked in the mirror and said, maybe I should quit? Sure. But I always knew that there was a gift that was given to me, and it was my job to nourish that gift and be the best possible player that I possibly could be. And I knew I had a duty, and I wanted to make sure that I was going to fulfill that.
Yes. Was there a game? Was there a moment when you started feeling like people were recognizing you, in high school, or a tournament or something?
I don't know if it was a game, because again, I was a kid that I was averaging 40 points a game at 8 years old, so this is something that I was already built to do. You know, like it was who I was. So for me, I think that it wasn't necessarily I needed my own validation, but I was looking for validation for people of credibility, especially my peers. So the class of 96, like I was looking for validation from the Street and Smith magazines and all of that type of stuff. That's what I was chasing. I didn't really entertain the low level criticism. I was looking for validation from the higher ups, you know, from my peers that stood next to me across the country. So to pick a game, maybe the Magic Round Ball Classic
I was going to talk about
was probably the validation that I had always looked for. But prior to that, I never really needed validation because I knew what I was.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what I was the entire time.
Okay. So what was the college process for you? You know, did you have a lot of options, or was it always going to be Detroit Mercy?
I didn't have a lot of options. I wasn't highly recruited, which
even with having that you know, that MVP performance and all these tournaments, scoring 40 a game, you still like, was it they just used your height, right? Is that what it was? It's just the height?
When you're small, they're always going to say what you can't do. Of course. That's just the nature of being a small basketball player. They're not going to never say what you're great at. They're always going to say what you can't do, right? Of course. So for me, that's what I faced. So I wasn't highly recruited. I heard the naysayers that, yeah, he's a great scorer in high school and this and that, but there's no way he'll be able to do that in Division I basketball. Like it was always the doubt. And then once I exceed that, then it was another. Then it was like they kept raising or kept moving the goalposts every time I would make a field goal because it's like, okay. So no, I wasn't recruited heavily. Georgia Tech was really after me. I tell this story all the time. I probably would have ended up at Georgia Tech if I wasn't a Prop 48. Coach Bobby Crimmins was very interested in me. And if you go back at the history of the Georgia Tech guards in that era of 96, 95, 94, 93, 92, they always had great scoring guards. Kenny Anderson, Travis Best, Mark Price, Stephon Marbury. Like Coach Crimmins loved small scoring guards. Mm-hmm. So word got to him that maybe the best small scoring guard resides in Michigan. So Georgia Tech started to reach out to my high school coach, to my dad. But I was a Prop 48, meaning that I didn't qualify with the NCAA clearinghouse academically. So the ACC at the time did not accept non-qualifiers. So I wasn't able to go to Georgia Tech because I was qualified.
That's a bummer.
So, but for me, it was a blessing in disguise because then I chose to go to University of Detroit and stay home because as a kid growing up, the University of Detroit was always my favorite college as a kid growing up. Mm-hmm. So I got to live out my childhood dream by going to University of Detroit.
And so you go to University of Detroit. How did you adapt? Was it an easy to adjustment, or did you have the usual freshman, struggle, trying to figure out, going from high school to college now?
Yeah, I had the typical freshman struggles. And my freshman struggles were more of, I didn't like coming off the bench as a freshman. Like I'm still mad at my coaches for that. Like I'm still mad. Yeah, I'm still mad today. And I'm the owner with SportsTalk 2319, obviously 2,319 points. Yeah, that's what it's named after. But I believe I would have scored 3,000 points if I would have started as a freshman. I just felt like there were games where I could really take off. But we had such a great team that my coaches, and they'll tell you this if you ask them, they would kind of hold me back from exploding. Like they would cap me at like 22 minutes, I would have like 13 points and 5 assists, and they would like take me out the game. And I'm a scorer. Like I want to erupt for like 29 and 8. But it was like I had to do that because it was for the betterment of the team. So I struggled with not playing all the time as a freshman and being more of a role player, spark player. But it played out. We won my freshman year. It went over well, but I'm still a little upset at that because I feel like I would be a 3,000 point scorer if they would have started me. So I'm a little bitter about that. I'm gonna be honest with you on your show.
Yeah. When did you start feeling comfortable as a player and just as a student, because it's a big adjustment going to college. I know I had an adjustment and I wasn't, a student athlete. So I can imagine being a student athlete, you got to worry about your studies, but then you got to worry about ball too. So when was that? When did you first started getting comfortable, being a student athlete?
That's a great question, man. I wasn't a great student in high school. And I had to sit out my first year, so it taught me a lot. So when I sat out my first year, it taught me how to kind to value my time and kind of allocate social life, education, training. I started to learn that during my sit out year. And over time, I would say about halfway through the season, I kind of had it figured out of going to study table, not staying at the campus parties too long, get some sleep because you got practice in the morning.
Sleep,
like
that's probably the most important thing. Sleep.
Sleep is so important in college. You got to find some sleep, everybody, because we've watched people party themselves out of school and not be able to perform. So I had to prioritize why I was in college. I was in college for 2 reasons. I was there to get my education, and I was there to be the greatest Titan of all time. So I had to remind myself, why am I here in college? And I would ask myself and remind myself of that when I felt like I was slipping away from those 2 tasks. And that's what kept me in line.
And that's good because I've talked to a lot of guys, especially a lot of college kids who I've had on the show, and they talk about that freshman adjustment. Like it's tough.
It's tough.
And it can really it can make you sink, or you can just figure it out. Like because like you said, coming off the bench. I mean, you in high school, you were starting. You would. For your starter, so now you have to adjust. And for a lot of guys that I've talked to on my show, they said, I go from averaging 30, 35, being a starter and having the ball in my hand at all time. And then I go to college and now I'm playing maybe garbage time minutes or if any. And that's a huge adjustment. I don't think people realize how big of an adjustment that is, So it's always that struggle, to figure out like how to adapt. And for some people, they don't figure it out. And we've seen it in with 5-star players where they're the guy and they go to, wherever and they have that struggle. And we've seen a lot this year with guys and in previous years, we see that a lot, and that's tough.
That's college basketball. What kids need to understand about college basketball, all of your teammates were the best player in high school. That's what you got to understand. So it's really the survival of the fittest now, because once you get to college, everybody was all state. Everybody averaged 25 a game. Everybody was the highest jumper. Everybody was this. So you got a team full of all these high school superheroes. So now how do you become a superhero within the confinement of being locked in with other superheroes?
Yeah.
And I was able to figure out and how to navigate how to be that. But it was a huge adjustment my freshman year because I went from, never not starting a game in my entire life to all of a sudden I'm coming off the bench my entire freshman year. And it wasn't because I wasn't ready or anything like that. It was just the fact we had a really deep team my freshman year. We were deep. We went 25-6 my freshman year, and we ended up beating St. John's.
Yeah.
So, like, I was on a loaded team. My team was good. I won Rookie of the Year and all of that stuff. That was cool. I averaged double figures as a freshman. So we had a great team. So that's why I understood from a coach's standpoint why they did what they did. But I'm still angry at y'all. Y'all should have started.
Rashad's still holding that. It's funny because I was talking to Scott Pollard. I had him on my show Monday, and he still can't get over, his loss in college in I think 96 when he was playing at Kansas over Arizona. And I asked him, I was like, what bothers you more, the loss in college or losing to the Lakers in the conference final? He's like, losing to Arizona still bothers me to this day. That's the number one. And it's crazy how a lot of guys always go back to college. That hurts because you only have a short window to do that. And when those losses, they last longer,
Yeah. You got 4 years tops in college. That's why. Like, you only got in the NBA, you could play 12 years, you could play 15, you could play 7. But in college, you only got 4 years.
Yep.
You got a small window to make something happen. So that's why college is kind of echoes louder than the professional.
Yeah. And you talked about you won, newcomer of the year your freshman year, and then you go to the NCAA tournament and you beat St. John's. Talk about that. Like that must have been, just getting to the tournament is a highlight in itself. But then actually winning a game, how was that?
That was, it was something out of a movie for me because as a kid, I watched March Madness, right? I sat at home. I've always been a huge college basketball person. Like I'm still, I love college basketball.
Of course.
And so to be in it, as a participant, and we were at the United Center too, right? So we're like, wow, this is where Michael Jordan played. So it was just like, and to beat that St. John's team, they had Ron Artest, they had Felipe Lopez.
They had some ballers.
Yeah, no, his name is Meta World Peace, but at the time his name was Ron Artest.
Yep.
Zendon Hamilton, like St. John's was really loaded for us to come away with a win. Again, it was one of those mid-major, upsets or whatever. To the world, it was an upset. To us, it was a win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, getting to the tournament is special, but then when you actually win a game, like it's just amazing, and I'm sure you were just thrilled, beating like you said, that was a good St. John's team.
They were talking about
Felipe Lopez is a New York City legend, over here. That's how I grew up on. Growing up in New York, Ron Artest from Queens, Queensbridge, that's I grew up, around those guys, and then seeing that team and for you guys to take them down. That's always going to live forever. That's going to be one of a memorable moment, forever. So your college career. You had just a phenomenal career. Player of the year multiple times. Like you said, it's funny because I'm doing my research and I see that your points 23, 19, and I'm like, it hit me. It's like, okay, that makes sense why you put 23. I finally, I put two and two together. So just talk to me about your college career and. What stands out to you, and what's your proudest moment?
I just love the entire college experience. A kid growing up watching the University of Detroit, watching the greats of Archie Tellis and guys like that, John Long, Terry Tyler, Terry Durod, God rest his soul, Spencer Haywood, Dave DeBuscher, just so many great players came from the University of Detroit. And so for me, I was chasing history, I was chasing history. I told you I had two reasons why I went to college, and that was to get a great education and to be the greatest Titan of all time. That was why I went there. And, it was such a great experience. I had some fantastic teammates, great professors. My coaches were great teachers. So many memorable wins. I only lost one game at home in 4 years. So I think that's the most memorable for me, is only losing one time.
Who'd you lose to?
I don't want to talk about
it. Could you that probably still eats at you every day. Like, man, we lost that one game,
One game, man. Like Butler beat us. We lost to Butler. And yeah, I don't want to talk
I feel it in your face, Rashad. I see it. The pain it still bothers you.
Yeah, I really don't want to talk about it, man.
All right. We don't have to go back to that painful moment when you lost.
It was a great 4 years. Like I said, I was surrounded by great teammates, man. Jermaine Jackson, Bakari Alexander, Desmond Ferguson, Willie Green, Terrell Riggs, and Greg Graves, and Jimmy Twyman, and Mark Maxwell, and Walter Kraft, Bernie Foose. I just had great teammates. Kareem Maine. So many great teammates, man. Just a great experience for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So your college career is done. What's next? What are you thinking? Is it all right? I want to go to the NBA. Is it overseas? What's your thought process now that your college career is done?
I never in 100 years plan to play overseas. You know, as a kid growing up, you don't grow up dreaming of playing overseas.
Cool.
Not me. I dreamed of playing in the NBA. I dreamed of putting on a Detroit Piston jersey like Isaiah Thomas, and it was the dreams. The dreams kept me alive. The dreams kept me fighting. The dreams kept me wanting more. So, I wanted the NBA. I won the Naismith Award. I was the all-time leading scorer and three-point and free throws and whatever, all the offensive categories and MVPs and everything that you possibly could name from an accolade standpoint. I won. I've done it, So for me, I thought the next step would be the NBA.
And did you go through the draft process and all that? How was that for you?
I was MVP of Portsmouth. I was MVP. I went through the draft camps and everything. I won MVP. I ended up, hiring an agent, Hank Thomas, God rest his soul. He was a fantastic person, really great agent. I trained with Michael Jordan. When Jordan was making his comeback to the Wizards, I trained with Michael Jordan the summer of 2001. I trained with Michael, watching him get ready to try to make that Wizards run, playing in the open runs with Jamal Crawford and Paul Pierce and Sean Marion. Like I was there, experiencing all of that. And I felt at home. Like this is what I've dreamed of. This is where my skill has taken me. But once the draft came, my name wasn't called. And it just, it threw me for a loop. But you got to pick up your belongings, and you got to keep stepping.
Yeah,
living.
Did you have a feeling that you would get drafted? Was there teams calling you? How was that?
Oh yeah, I was in mock drafts. One mock draft had me going to San Antonio. One mock draft had me going to Orlando. I worked out for the Orlando Magic twice. I worked out for Orlando twice. I worked out for Golden State. Like I've had New York Knicks. Like I had the workouts, and I thought at worst, because you got 60 picks, So for me, it's like there's not 60 guys better than me.
Especially with your resume. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
Your resume speaks for itself. I mean, all-time leading points, free. I mean, you do stuff that you're a good three-point shooter. You could shoot free throws. You're a scorer. I mean,
defensive year. I won that. So I'm speaking from a resume standpoint, a criteria standpoint. Like this is not even my individual like bravado thoughts. This is my resume. Like there's not 60 participants in this draft that you'll take in front of me. There's no way, And so when that happened, it was kind of a shock. It was, I was hurt by it, but it taught me a lot too.
Because that's something that for a lot of people that would just devastate, and it would just kill your morale, and it's not the first instance for you. It's not like, oh, this is the first time this has happened. Like they doubted you, when you were younger in high school and going to college, like, and then now your dreams of being a pro, they're doubting you again. So how did you just keep getting back up and just fighting? Because like you said, a lot of people would just be like, what? I didn't get drafted? And I'm sure you watched the draft and you were like, no, that guy got drafted ahead of me?
Yeah.
Like, you probably like, no, I'm better than him. And it's like, the guy averaging 4 points a game, come off the bench, gets drafted with in the first round. You're like, what?
It was
like, how do you just manage to just not get in the, curl yourself up and just, be defeated? Because I mean, for a lot of people that would happen.
Yeah. I get that question a lot. Still to this day, I get that question from like my closest friends, like family members, like, Rashad, how did you survive that? And I just felt like it's just who I am. It's how I was raised. My father always told me to look everything in the face. My father always told me to embrace everything that life offers and fight it. And I've never seen my father crawl up. I've never seen my father quit. I've never seen my father run. So that there was enough strength for me to not do the same thing. My grandfather, his father, never ran, never shied away. And I just felt that I was a face in a community. I was a mentor in a community. There were so many younger kids that looked up to me, that wanted to be the next Rashad Phillips. And I felt that there's no way I can curl up in a corner because there's too many people that are looking at me. There's too many kids that want to see my reaction. And I wanted to lead by example and say, hey, I'm going to take this shot, say that, and I'm going to get up from it. So there's an old saying that there's a difference between featherweights and heavyweights. And they say that featherweights take certain punches and can't get up. What makes you a heavyweight is taking a punch and being able to get up. And I felt I had to be a heavyweight at that particular moment, not only for myself, but my family and my community.
Yeah. And that shows a lot of strength and resiliency because, like I mentioned before, it could knock you down and it could keep you down. And the ability to get up from that before that 10 count,
close.
Yeah, I'm sure it was close, but you were able to get up and keep grinding. So what's next in your mind? You don't hear your name called draft day. Are you getting calls from teams after, to come into camp for summer league? What happens after that?
I got a call the next morning by the Golden State Warriors.
Okay.
I got a call the next day. So that morning, it was a sleepless night, obviously. I was up all night with my dad and like my friends, and we're ticking off names. Like I outplayed him in camp. He only averaged 12 points and shot 34% from three. We're like breaking down like how.
Yep.
So the next morning, my agent calls, and I had a two-way pager back then. It was 2001. I had the two-way pager. I had a little flip phone,
like the one Nelly had in the videos, right? Yeah. The two-way pager.
So my agent Hank Thomas calls me. He said, "I got good news for you." I'm like, "What? Ain't no such thing as good news. I didn't get drafted last night. Ain't no good news, right?" He's like, "No. The Golden State Warriors, they just called me. They want you to come in for summer league. They really love you. Blah blah blah. They really wanted to draft you."
I think I lost Rashad. So hopefully we get Rashad back. Oh, I think we got him back. I think we lost you there, Rashad, for a little bit.
You see me?
Yep, I see you.
All right, so Golden State calls me. They call my agent. My agent said, "I got good news for you." I'm thinking, well, ain't no good news. I just didn't get drafted, right? So he's like, Golden State Warriors want you to come into summer camp. They really love you. They wanted to draft you, but they didn't have any more picks. Now, mind you, in 2001, Golden State Warriors, they had 3 picks. They drafted Jason Richardson out of Michigan State.
Okay.
They drafted Troy Murphy out of Notre Dame. Troy Murphy was really good in college.
Lefty, yep.
Lefty. And they drafted with their second-round pick, Gilbert Arenas.
All right, Gilbert was a second-round pick, right?
Golden State, me and Gilbert was in the same draft.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. He was. And he was supposed to be projected to go way higher, too.
Yeah, he was supposed to go me and Gilbert were supposed to both be first-round picks. I thought Gilbert should have been a top 20 pick. I really loved Gilbert in college. Even though I was in college, I still was a supporter of other college players. I thought that Gilbert Arenas should have been a top 20 pick. Like, he was really that good. And I can see how good he was going to be down the line, right? So I'm going to Golden State, for Summer League. And I get to Golden State, and they're like, yeah, we really love you here. And I'm like, I don't think it's going to pan out because you guys already have 3 picks. You have 3 rookies, 3 good rookies, too. Like, Golden State really did a good job in 2001.
That was a good draft for them. Those guys played for a long time.
Those
guys. Yep.
Like, I think Golden State had the best draft of 2001. So I was like, damn, I'm going to the team that drafted the best players, So, again, long story short, Jason Richardson was great in Summer League. Troy Murphy was great. And Gilbert Arenas, you could just see that he had an aura about him that he was pissed off that he was a second-round pick, and he would play that way. I love playing against Gilbert Arenas, especially in practice. We had some good battles in Summer League practices. Like, he's a real good dude, So I really enjoyed that moment. But again, it fell short, and I was off to the G League.
Off to the G League. How was that experience in the G League? And did it, what did you learn from that experience?
It was called the D League at the time.
Oh, yeah, it was the D League. Yeah. It was
the first year. It was the inaugural season of the D League. So I was actually, this is a fun fact. I was actually the first point guard drafted ever in D League history.
Okay.
I was the 7th pick overall and the first point guard drafted. The Birdman went number 1. Chris Anderson, yeah. We were in the same D-League draft camp together. And I went to the Mobile Revelers. I was drafted by Sam Vincent, who was a great player at Michigan State, played with Jordan with the Chicago Bulls. He was a head coach for the Charlotte Bobcats. And his assistant coach was Dale Demps, who used to be the GM for the Pelicans. So it's like, this is funny how all that stuff plays out, right? Those are my coaches. They drafted me. And you know what? I had a great time. Mobile was great. I had some great friends. I had some great times there. But when you get to the professional ranks, and I want to share this on your show, if you go look at my D-League stats, you may say, oh, no, it's stats. Like, you only average 12 points and 3 assists. But if you look at when you get to that level of, like, minor league basketball, it's like a revolving door. Like, I had at least 50 teammates that year. Some games they will bring a guy in and play him the whole game and only play me 6 minutes. It was a lot of like, it wasn't like you're the guy, you're going to play the minutes. It was just like a bunch of like, okay, you play this game, you play this game, you play this game. So that's why my stats in the D League was like that. But if you look at the last month of my D League career, I won D-League Player of the Month. I was the only rookie in the entire league to win Player of the Month in the D-League. And the reason why is that Sam Vincent called a meeting with me, and we needed to make a playoff push. I was the only rookie point guard to lead his team to the playoffs as well in the D-League. This is all documented. Sam Vincent called me in his office, and he says, I know you should be pissed off at me because I've been jerking your minutes all season long. And I haven't done a good job of auditioning you for a 10-day contract for the NBA. So here's what I'm going to do, Rashad. I'm going to give you this entire month. I'm going to play you over 35 minutes a game, and I'm going to let you hoop.
Mm-hmm.
You go back and look at the stats. I averaged 18 and like 7 or 18 and 6. And you can go back and look it up. And I won player of the month, and I took us to the playoffs. So if Coach Vincent would have gave me that nod from the day one, then I probably wouldn't have played the entire season in the D-League. I probably would have got called up and then would have been in the NBA. But it was just too much guys coming in, NBA teams send players down.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to sit behind them because it was just a lot of – I started learning the business of the game. The D-League taught me that it was a business. And that's what I learned from that. And then after that, I ended up going overseas, playing and making some good money and doing my –
How was the experience, just traveling, overseas? You went to, you played for a few countries, how was that experience and learning that, now it's there's an adjustment from high school to college and college to doing the pro, but it's different once now you're going abroad. Now you're going to different countries. Talk to me about that adjustment and figuring that out.
That was tough, to get on a plane and fly 10 hours somewhere.
I've heard horror stories from guys on my show. I've heard some horror stories, some 12 hours, and then you don't, like I said, the learning the language barrier and all that.
Language, and then, it was just, I had some different experiences overseas. But it was, again, when you're going through a storm, always remember that you're going to get out of it. And I felt like, since I'm in a certain storm, I'm going to learn something while I'm in here. Mm-hmm. So if I ever get put in a storm again, I'll know how to navigate. And that's kind of how I look at my overseas career. It taught me a lot. It taught me how to deal with different ethnic groups. I learned the cultures of different places. I got to travel and live other spots and befriend and establish friendships with so many different people. I got friends everywhere, man. I got friends in Australia. I got friends in Saudi Arabia. I got friends in Turkey. I got friends in France, Italy. Like, I got friends all over the world now because of that. And going through that storm, I didn't know that I was going to develop friendships that would last a lifetime. So I got something out of that storm.
That's a beautiful thing. That's definitely a beautiful thing. So how did you come about Sports Talk 2319? How did that come about? Was that always something you wanted to do? Just talk to me about how everything, came about.
Well, I went to college for communications. I got my degree in liberal arts. I know it's the cliche thing to say of, make sure when you go to school, get your education. But for me, I took that to heart. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of times, basketball players or athletes in particular, when they go to college, they don't know what to major in, right? Because we're so focused on, well, I'm gonna be a professional player, so I don't really care about my major. I didn't have that mindset going into college. Like, when I went into college, I knew exactly what I wanted to major in. Mm-hmm. I wanted to major in communications and broadcasting. So for me, this is not something that I just came up with. Like, this is something that was planned for me 20 years ago. I always wanted to be an analyst of the game. I always wanted to be a broadcaster or evaluator. Like, this is something that I've always wanted to do. So that's kind of how I came about Sports Talk 2319, is that social media started to really grow. And it was like, you know what? I could be a part of that and kind of put my brand out there, because social media is a space where you can do that. Back then you would have to get a job at a TV station, but now you don't. So I was able to create my own YouTube channel, Sports Talk 2319, and be able to create a platform where I was able to use my gift of evaluating and spotting and targeting talent and highlighting them to the masses. So that's why I kind of started it, because it's kind of who I've always been.
And when was when did you start, really diving into evaluating talent, and how did you go about, the process of how you are going to evaluate a guy?
Yeah.
Because everyone has their own,
Yeah.
ways of evaluating talent, but how did you go about your way to evaluate talent?
My father started this scouting service when I was like 8 years old, right? So my dad used to take me to high school basketball games twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. High school basketball games in Detroit would start at 3:30. I would get out of school at 3 o'clock. My dad would pick me up and we would go to the high school basketball games. What he would tell me to do at the games, he would say, I want you to write a scouting report on the best players on each team. So that was like my homework. So me and my dad would go to the games. I would have a notepad and I would be writing scouting reports at 8 years old. So this is something that I've been doing for a long time. So what my dad would do was take my scouting reports and he would make scouting pages off of my scouting reports. So I've been evaluating for a long time and never knew that it would end up to where it is today, but that's how it is. Like, life is funny like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been writing evaluations since I was like 8 years old. Like, I've been doing it like naturally. And then now it's just, when I first started my Twitter, I used my Twitter to be an evaluator. Like, I was one of the first people to ever use Twitter for evaluation purposes only. Now everybody evaluates from their Twitter page. You can go back to tweets from me like back in 2008, and it's like, damn, like nobody was evaluating from their Twitter pages in 2008.
No, that wasn't. It was not heard of in 2008.
2008, nobody was doing evaluations from their Twitter pages. You can go to 2008, 2009, 2010 and find me evaluating talent because that's what I thought it was for. Mm-hmm. I didn't know Twitter was just for like communicating. I used it for like evaluating. So I was doing it wrong, but it ended up turning out to be the right thing to do. I kind of stumbled on it. I wasn't like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. And I kind of
that's usually how it happens, right? It just happens. You don't plan on it happening. It just happens, and then it just keeps going.
Yeah, that's how it was. Like, I see tweets from me from like 2012, and it's like
I saw one from 2011 or 2012 from you that someone had posted just recently.
Yeah, it was like nobody was evaluating on Twitter back then.
I wasn't heard of because you would have to get the magazines, you would have to go to your CVS or because that's what I would do. Like that in order for me to figure out, all right, who are these guys? Let me get more in depth. You had to watch a Sports Center and wait for the segment to come on, or you had to go to the CVS, the Walgreens, and hope that they have the magazine, and see if they have it there.
Right, that's what I was doing, and I was like evaluating players, and never knew that it would be like now. My entire timeline is filled with everybody evaluating, and I love it. Like I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it is a whole different world now. Like that, I did like for me. When I started to really dive into the draft stuff, it was watching your stuff, but then I didn't know there's a whole community of people that are diving into the draft, and I'm like, whoa! Like I always thought it was the typical guys on ESPN and Fox Sports or whatever, or like I said, gotta find the magazine at CVS or whatever. And I'm like, whoa, there's a whole world of people who are evaluating talent and they're actually easy to access. Like I could just DM them, hey, what about this guy? Or I can, hey, come on my show and can we talk about this? It's crazy how it just exploded.
Yes. Yes,
and
I love it. I love it. I love everybody. I encourage people to continue to do it.
Yeah, and you've been able to have some, you have Max and you had Zach. You've been able to do some draft stuff, and that was amazing. How was that experience, to cover the draft and all that? Because I tuned in. I've had Max on my show. I've had Zach on my show. Those guys are just absolutely brilliant, minds and talent evaluators. So how was that, to be able to cover the draft and all? Because that was. From me watching it was awesome to see you guys.
I mean, it's something I did it last year, and this was my second year doing it, so it was just fun for me to using that platform and that digital space to be able to give you want to be able to give your listeners, your followers, an outlet from just the regular turning on to TV and listening to the same evaluators every year. You want to be able to give them a different outlet. And so that's what my draft show provides, is a different outlet, a different perspective, and how to see prospects.
Yes, then like I said, it was, you guys killed it. You absolutely killed it, and definitely did your thing. So a few more things before I let you go. Like I said,
Yep.
Rashad Phillips, I really appreciate you coming on the show and chopping up with me. You have your position definitions, and to me, this is so fascinating because when we think about positions, you think point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, center. And it's like now, especially in today's basketball, there's positions in positions.
Correct.
And what you were able to do with your position definitions is kind of just expand that from the positional and give, like you said, positions in positions. So talk to me about that and how you were able to create that, because to me, it's fascinating.
Thank you. No, I just follow the landscape of basketball. Like when you look at everything around us, like everything's about evolution, man. Like we're talking to each other on a computer. That's evolution. Like you look at cars, you look at TVs. Remember, they used to be the fat back TVs. Now you got flat screens. Yep. Remember, you had 720p. Now you got 1080p. Now you got 4K. Like everything's about evolution. So for me, watching sports, watching basketball in particular, it was like, these players are different than they were 30, 40 years ago. Like, so how come we are still calling these new evolved players? How come we are still using the same terminology from the 1950s?
Yep.
Like, it's unfair to the athlete. It's unfair to the evolution of life to still use the same terminology on something that has evolved. So I was able to sit back, study, and try to create positions within the positions, because that's the way the game is played. And I was able to kind of label them out and try to be as strategic and not try to get cute with it, and just keep it as plain and understandable as I possibly can. And it's been fun. It's been fun watching it.
Yes, because I've seen a lot of people, reference your stuff, your rankings in their shows, That's so awesome. Like you said, you created something new that we all try to figure, like when you're talking about Steph Curry and Dame Lillards and Paul, and we just said they're point guards, but they're different. They're all different types of point guards. They're not just your traditional. CP3 can be traditional, but you see Steph Curry and Dame, they're different. They're not your typical traditional point guard. They're different. So for you to be able to break it down and show us, hey, this is and have the tiers and show that, to me, that was brilliant. I'm surprised no one else has done something similar to that. But credit to you for doing that, because it's something that I'm like, that's actually smart. I'm surprised more people haven't done this, but definitely a beautiful way of showing, different types of, positions and positions. And that's really dope that you came up with that. But Rashad, like I said, I appreciate you coming on the show. So before we sign off, I wanted to ask you this one thing. Okay. What are you grateful for? It's something that I've been asking my guest of late. I had someone on my show, and he said he always ends the show with asking people, what are they grateful for? So for you, Rashad, what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful for family. I'm grateful for health. I'm grateful for the opportunity to involve myself with people. It's just, I'm a people person. I love to teach. I love to share. I love to help. I try to pride myself on being, selfless, of always extending yourself to the next person, to always give the next person a helping hand, to always elevate your surroundings. So I'm grateful that, God has blessed me with the talent, with the knowledge, to be able to, do something that I love, and inject those who want to listen, inject them with the knowledge that I have, and continue to share and spread it.
Yeah. And, I obviously I follow a lot of people who have worked with you, and every time I see them talk about you, it's always glowing reviews. Everyone's always talking highly of you, and that's why I was really looking forward to talking to you, because I wanted to talk to you, the person, get to know the story about Rashad Phillips, because like I said, I'm really appreciate that you were able to come on the show, chop it up with me for this last hour, talk to me about growing up and all that, and so I appreciate you coming on the show, Rashad. This was so much fun. I really, really appreciate this, man.
Thank you so much, Chris. Don't let this be our last time. I'll be back.
No, yes, let's do it again. Because listen, we could talk for I could talk for hours, and we could talk basketball all day. But I like I said, I appreciate you, sitting down for this hour, talking to me about everything, about your basketball career and your journey, because it's a great story, and that's what I love telling stories on my show. Yeah. We could talk basketball, that's fun, and get into the X's and O's and all that, what's going on in the league right now. But I love storytelling. I love. I get so much good feedback from people telling me, how I, go about my show and telling stories and about, the guys on my show. So, like I said, this was a lot of fun. And like I said, we're definitely going to do this again down the line, because we got a lot more to talk about. But Rashad, before we officially go off, is there anything that you want to share, anything you want to plug before we sign off?
No, I just thanks everybody for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter, RP3 Natural. You can go to my website, SportsTalk2319.com. You can follow my YouTube channel, SportsTalk2319. Find me on Instagram, Rashad Phillips 2319. As you can see, that 2319 follows me everywhere I go.
Yes, and it could have been 3,000, but Coach messed up, man. 3,000. 3,000.
Sports Talk 3146.
Yes, Coach, man, you should have done better. Should have played him. You should play Rashad as a freshman, man. I
appreciate you, brother. Talk soon.
Yes. Talk soon. Thank you, everyone. That's Rashad Phillips. I'm Chris LeBron, Off the Ball Pod, and we are signing off. Thank you guys for listening.